At present, Hong Kongers are decrying the Beijing government for taking away their freedoms and democracy, especially after the passing of the national security law. But how did the situation come to be? How did Beijing suddenly take Hong Kong's freedom and civil liberties away? It was not a sudden process, and Beijing has been slowly hijacking the city's constitution over the years since the British handover in 1997. In 1984, the Sino-British Joint Declaration was signed between then British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and Chinese Premier Zhao Ziyang. China agreed to reassume control of Hong Kong from July 1997, but it would not change any part of the constitution for 50 years, or till 2047.
In 1990, during a meeting with Hong Kong tycoon Li Ka-shing, Deng Xiaoping once said,
"I am not going to change how Hong Kong is being governed. It is not just a short-term commitment, but one for the long term. I have mentioned the reason many times in the past. I am not going to change how Hong Kong is governed in 50 years, and even after 50 years is up, there is no reason to do so."
Hong Kong was supposed to retain a high degree of autonomy, with its legal and judicial systems staying intact. Fast forward 10 years later to 2007, Chief Executive Donald Tsang is sworn in at a ceremony to mark the 10th anniversary of the handover. Standing by is then Chinese President Hu Jintao, showing the world China's interests in Hong Kong. In 2014, China then attempts to undermine the fundamentals of Hong Kong's democracy. Beijing announced that only leaders who were vetted by the Chinese regime could rule Hong Kong, and this triggered a wave of protests, also known as the Umbrella Revolution. China started to increasingly erode Hong Kong's free speech in 2016, where 5 members of Causeway Bay Books disappeared mysteriously. They were detained by Chinese authorities in mainland China, as they sold books deemed to be politically sensitive by the Chinese government. This started to spark fears of increasing Chinese intervention in Hong Kong's law and order. On July 1, 2017, Carrie Lam is sworn in as chief executive. Under her leadership, Hong Kong's legal and judicial systems are severely altered, as the extradition bill announced in April 2019 allowed extradition of Hong Kongers to mainland China, where they will be judged based on Chinese law. Hong Kongers then took to the streets to protest, but it soon turned violent as policemen used tear gas and beat protesters up. Today, the national security law has been passed, granting Beijing powers to crack down on anyone or anything they deem subversive to mainland China. The autonomy that was promised in 1984 has already been fully compromised, with Beijing going back on its word just 23 years into the Sino-British Joint Declaration.